Kare stood on the threshold of the human starship UHS Intrepid, her pale violet skin faintly iridescent under the docking bay's sterile lights. Her pupils, elongated and silver, narrowed as she scanned the entrance. She had studied Terran technology for years, its raw efficiency, its inelegant designs, but seeing it in person was an entirely different matter. The air was denser, warmer, and buzzing with unseen static. Somewhere deep within the hull, engines hummed like distant thunder, the pulse of a civilization still reaching toward the stars with ambition as its only compass. A uniformed officer approached, tall, broad-shouldered, and unmistakably human. His expression was cordial but cautious, a reflection of how most of his kind regarded the Thalvin. Not enemies, not quite friends. "Welcome aboard, Specialist Kare," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Commander Hughes." Kare blinked at the gesture, then inclined her head politely. She ignored the outstretched hand. Thalvin custom forbade physical contact at first greeting. "Commander Hughes," she replied with the soft precision of her people's cadence. "Your hospitality is noted." Hughes chuckled, a deep, relaxed sound. "You'll get used to us. I am prepared to observe, adapt, and report. I do not anticipate discomfort." She said it plainly, though the warmth and unpredictability in the air made her antennas twitch. He gestured for her to follow, and they walked side by side through metallic corridors. Screens pulsed with data. Crew members passed with nods and murmured greetings. Kare's neural translator absorbed it all. Words, tones, social patterns. Her species had evolved empathy to an art form, and yet, among humans, it often faltered. They were harder to read than she expected. Spiky emotional waves cloaked under humor, sarcasm, and quiet intensity. They passed a mess hall where laughter erupted over a spilled drink, and Kare tilted her head. "Your people are chaotic." Hughes smiled. "We call it being alive." In the central control hub, dozens of consoles circled a holographic projection of the current star system. The air smelled faintly of ozone and synthetic coffee. Kare's gaze roamed the controls, glowing, layered, and shockingly asymmetrical. Nothing in human design was graceful, yet it worked. Somehow, as she began asking questions, clarity, precision, power distribution, there was a thudding sound from behind. Then claws skittered on the floor. Kare turned, her eyes instantly narrowing to slits. Bounding into the room was a massive, furred creature. Four-legged, jaws parted in what looked like a snarl, pink tongue lolling, eyes locked on her with primal focus. Kare's mind registered threat before logic could catch up. She screamed, a piercing alarm-like sound that silenced the room. Her body coiled backward, one hand reaching instinctively for her concealed neural lance. "Stand down," Hughes barked, stepping between her and the beast. "Kare, it's okay. It's okay." The creature halted, tail wagging furiously, ears perked up. It panted with a dopey grin and sat obediently beside Hughes, clearly unbothered by the tension. Kare's voice trembled. "What is that monster?" Hughes blinked, then laughed. Not mockingly, but with disbelief. "That's not a monster. That's my dog. His name's Atlas." She stared at the animal. Thick fur, golden and black. Large jaws, still slightly open. Eyes intelligent, but unreadable. Atlas tilted his head, sensing her confusion, or perhaps her fear. "That," she said slowly, "is a predator." "Well, technically yes," Hughes said, rubbing the dog's head. "But also no. He's domesticated. Companion animal. Think of him as crew." Kare's pupils contracted to pinpoints. "You bring a predator on a military vessel. For companionship." Atlas barked once, tail wagging harder now. A few crew members chuckled nervously. Hughes gave a shrug. He's more than a companion. He's security, morale, early warning system, and, well, family. The word struck Kara like an unexpected gravity surge. Atlas approached cautiously, head low. Kara's breath hitched, and her muscles tensed involuntarily. She wanted to step back, but Hughes held out a calming hand. "He won't hurt you," he said. "He's just curious. Like you. I'm not like him." "No," Hughes admitted. "But he's not what you think either." Kara stared at the dog's eyes, deep, amber, aware. There was no malice there, no intent to dominate. Just curiosity and patience. And perhaps something else she couldn't name. She took one careful step back. "Keep your Atlas at distance." "You got it." Hughes snapped his fingers and Atlas padded away, circling once before flopping down near a console. Within seconds, the command center returned to normal. Screens blinked, people whispered, but the mood had shifted slightly. Kara turned to Hughes. "My people have no equivalent. We do not keep dangerous animals as family." "I believe you," he said. "But that's why you're here, right? To understand us. To observe. Understanding is a deeper function." "Well," he said with a smirk, "you've just observed one of the most human things there is." She wasn't sure if he meant the dog or the laughter that had followed. Back in her assigned quarters, Kara sat at the room's single desk and opened her personal archive. The soft glow of the interface danced across her face as she dictated her first field log. Observation Entry 001. Humans demonstrate inconsistent behavioral logic. Their command hierarchy permits non-sapient predators to roam sensitive areas. One such specimen, Atlas, appears deeply integrated into the emotional ecosystem of the crew. Subject is dangerous by all biological measures, yet is treated with affection and reverence. She paused, tapping a finger against her chin. Emotional analysis. I experienced instinctive fear, which was not dismissed by contextual cues. Yet the crew exhibited no concern. The contradiction implies a cultural bond not rooted in biological safety. She hesitated, then added, "Curiosity increases." The entry closed with a faint chime. Kara leaned back, staring at the ceiling's gentle lighting array. Atlas's face hovered in her memory, its sharpness, its impossible gentleness. Her thoughts drifted to an old Thalvin fable, the fire beast and the child. A creature, once feared, became a guardian. She had dismissed such stories as metaphor. Now, standing aboard a ship where monsters slept peacefully beneath the feet of their makers, she wasn't so sure. The next morning, Kara entered the ship's observation dome early, before shift rotation. Earth hung outside the window, turning slowly beneath the stars, vast, alive, and full of contradiction. She heard the soft sound of claws on metal behind her. She turned, expecting fear. Atlas sat at the entrance, silent. Kara said nothing. Neither did he. But this time she did not scream. Kara stood still, her gaze locked with Atlas's. In the silence of the observation dome, time seemed to stretch. Earth turned slowly in the distance, its blue and green swirls alien and beautiful. Atlas didn't move closer, but his ears twitched forward, alert but calm. Kara remained motionless, waiting for the instinctual fear to rise again, but it didn't. Instead, there was a strange stillness inside her, uneasy but not unpleasant. She took a breath and walked slowly to one of the observation seats. Atlas followed, padding softly behind her but stopping several feet away. His eyes never left her, but there was no challenge in them, only curiosity. She sat, folding her hands neatly on her lap, spine straight, posture controlled. She had learned to mask discomfort, to suppress reflex. And yet, even now, she was aware of her own pulse, slightly elevated but steady. Atlas let out a low huff and lay down, resting his head on his paws. Kara turned back to the viewport, but found her thoughts looping, unable to pull away from his presence. She activated her neural pad and pulled up the data files on canine species, domesticated for tens of thousands of years, originally used for protection, hunting, companionship, varied in size and temperament, socially bonded with humans on a neurological level. She read these lines, but they didn't explain what she had seen, what she had felt the day before. The soft click of the dome door caught her attention. Commander Hughes stepped in, his expression neutral, eyes scanning the room until they landed on the two of them. He raised an eyebrow. "I didn't expect you to be up here this early," he said quietly. "I required solitude." He gave a small nod, stepping forward slowly. Atlas lifted his head, then, recognizing the newcomer, thumped his tail once and returned to rest. "You're not afraid of him anymore," Hughes noted, his tone careful. Kara hesitated. "Fear remains, but it is tempered. Progress," he said, smiling faintly. "Atlas doesn't warm up to everyone. He seems to like you. I have done nothing to earn that." She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Your species bonds easily. Illogically, maybe, but sometimes that's what saves us," he said. "You ever wonder why humans didn't wipe ourselves out centuries ago?" Kara tilted her head. "Frequently. It wasn't our intelligence. It was connection, families, loyalty, love, all those messy things that don't make sense on paper." Kara let the silence stretch. "Your emotional irrationality is well documented, but it persists because it functions. That's one way to put it." He sat beside her, the space between them respectful. Outside, Earth rotated in silence, unaware of their contemplation. "You didn't come just to observe us," Hughes said after a pause. "You volunteered for this mission." "Why?" Kara didn't answer immediately. Her gaze drifted from the planet to the reflection of her own face in the glass. "My people believe understanding leads to survival, but understanding your species requires proximity, risk. I chose to accept it. Curiosity, then duty." He studied her for a moment. "Do you miss your world?" Kara's eyes softened slightly. "Every second." The door hissed open again, and a junior officer entered, flustered and breathless. "Commander, there's a situation in hydroponics. One of the filtration systems is down. Critical failure. We've got flooding and power fluctuation on Deck B." Hughes stood at once. "On it." Kara rose as well. "I can assist." "You sure?" "I'm trained in environmental systems." He nodded. "Let's go." Atlas remained where he was, watching them leave. Kara caught his gaze one last time before the door closed. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, or trust. In hydroponics, chaos reigned. Lights flickered as steam hissed from broken conduits. Two crew members were already ankle-deep in water, struggling to reroute valves while sparks flew from a failing panel. Hughes issued rapid instructions, his voice calm but firm. Kara moved quickly, analyzing the schematics. "The primary coolant line is ruptured. Shut down secondary flow, or we risk destabilizing the oxygen mix." "Done," Hughes replied, fingers flying over a nearby console. She dropped to one knee and opened a side hatch, reaching into the mess of wires. Her species' dexterity was unparalleled. Her long fingers navigated the snarl of connections, isolating the damaged node. Water surged past her wrist, ice cold and rising fast. "There," she said. "Seal it now." Hughes activated the override. The hiss stopped. The water stilled. A collective breath was released. Kara stood, soaked to the elbow but steady. "You saved the system," Hughes said. I fulfilled my function. No, you went beyond it. She didn't answer. The compliment unsettled her more than the emergency. As they walked back through the corridors, Kare noticed the way the crew looked at her now. Different. Respect, perhaps. Or gratitude. She had intervened, not as an outsider, but as one of them. Later that evening, she returned to her quarters. Her soaked uniform had been replaced, her hair tied back neatly. The room was dim and silent. She activated her personal archive. Observation Entry 002. Today's events revealed a complexity in human social structure not fully captured by preliminary models. In crisis, hierarchical boundaries blur. Initiative is rewarded over protocol. Adaptability appears to be a core survival trait. She paused, tapping her fingers. Commander Hughes expressed approval, emotionally charged. It caused discomfort. Another pause. Additionally, the presence of Atlas remains a point of dissonance. He exhibits no hostility, despite my obvious fear. Data suggests emotional attunement. I do not yet understand the parameters by which humans evaluate trust in non-sapient species. A low, familiar sound interrupted her. She looked up. The door to her quarters had not fully latched. A nose pushed it open. Atlas patted in silently, tail wagging once. She froze. You should not be here. Atlas sat. Her pulse quickened. This space is designated for private. He whined softly, and she stopped speaking. He tilted his head and waited. No threat. No tension. Kare stood and approached the door. She meant to usher him out, to assert boundaries. But when she opened the door wider, Atlas didn't leave. Instead, he lay down on the threshold, head resting on his front paws, watching her. A part of her wanted to issue a command. Another part didn't. She returned to her desk. The soft click of the door closing behind her felt oddly comforting. When she glanced back, Atlas was still there. She finished her entry with an uncharacteristic addition. Subject: Atlas exhibits behavior that contradicts expectations. Possible theory: trust may be extended before logic permits it. Further observation required. The words lingered on the screen for a moment before she saved them. Outside, the stars moved in silence. And in that silence, for the first time, Kare felt less alone. The following morning, Kare awoke to the low, rhythmic thud of something heavy shifting nearby. Her eyes opened swiftly, pupils adjusting to the faint light. Atlas was already in her quarters, lying beside her bunk like a silent sentinel. He lifted his head when he sensed her movement, his ears perking up in acknowledgement. Kare stared at him for a long moment. There was no alarm this time, only quiet recognition. The tension that had once wrapped itself around her spine like a vice had loosened. His presence, once unsettling, now carried a strange reassurance. She sat up, exhaled slowly, and extended her hand toward him, tentatively, fingers splayed, palm outward. Atlas studied it, then leaned forward and sniffed her fingers. His breath was warm, his nose cold. He nudged her hand once with his snout, and she did not pull away. After dressing in standard uniform, she left her quarters with Atlas walking beside her. No one commented. The crew had adjusted quicker than she had. Perhaps they had seen something she hadn't. Perhaps trust was not earned only through logic, but demonstrated quietly in acts of presence. In the command room, Commander Hughes greeted her with a nod. We're being redirected. There's been a minor mining colony distress call in the Chiron Belt. Alliance Command wants us to investigate. Says we're the closest vessel with qualified xenotechnicians. Kare glanced at the mission logs. The transmission appears corrupted. Right. Could be interference, could be more. They flagged it as a potential Category 3 hazard. Contamination or hostiles. We'll know when we get there. Kara felt her pulse elevate, not with fear, but with anticipation. Field work was rare. Most of her duties involved calibration, translation, and observation. Direct intervention, though fraught with risk, was where her purpose sharpened. As they approached the Chiron belt, the bridge fell into its usual quiet rhythm. Instruments beeped. The soft hum of the ship's reactor filled the silence. On the main screen, a small outpost rotated slowly on a dying axis, tilted and dark. No transmissions were returning. Still no contact, said the communications officer. We'll send in a small team, Hughes decided. 2 humans, 1 Xenotech. Kara's name lit up on the dispatch manifest. When she stepped into the docking bay, suited up and ready, Atlas was already waiting beside the lead shuttle. His tail wagged once. You're not coming, she said instinctively. But then Hughes approached, carrying a small wrist-mounted module. He's trained for reconnaissance. In protection. If things go sideways, you'll want him with you. Kara hesitated. I'm not equipped to manage him. You won't need to. He's got his own protocols. Think of him as another crew member, just furrier. She looked down at Atlas, who met her gaze calmly. It wasn't obedience she saw there, it was understanding. The shuttle detached with a shudder. The approach to the outpost was uneventful, but the closer they came, the more wrong everything felt. The structure wasn't just damaged, it had been torn in two. Sections were collapsed inward. Scorch marks marred the hull, inconsistent with internal malfunction. When they boarded, the air was stale, metallic. Lights flickered. The power core hummed erratically. They split into formation. Kara at center, flanked by the 2 human engineers, both armed. Atlas moved ahead, ears pricked, nose twitching. We need to reach the command terminal, she said, scanning the layout. They descended into a dim corridor. Blood smeared the walls, thick, dark dried. Kara paused, analyzing. Human origin, she concluded. But the patterns are inconsistent. Scattered. No bodies, one engineer muttered. None. Atlas stopped at a sealed bulkhead and growled. Not loudly, just enough to stop them in their tracks. Kara approached and ran diagnostics. Manual lock. Bypass from the inside. Someone was trying to keep something out. The door slid open with effort. Beyond it lay the operations hub. Monitors blinked with static. A lone figure sat slumped at the console. One of the engineers stepped forward and checked the vitals. Dead. Likely for days. Kara connected to the terminal, fingers dancing across the interface. Files decrypted. Logs opened. Her eyes darted over the data, assimilating. They detected an anomaly in the asteroid field, she said. Unidentified organism. Not native. The miners brought back a sample. Within hours, the base reported erratic behavior, aggression, hallucinations, violence. It's unclear if it was viral or psionic. Containment failed. She paused, lips tightening. They activated a quarantine lockdown, but something breached it. Just then, the lights flickered and didn't return. A deep, wet noise echoed through the corridors, something slithering, something moving. Atlas stood rigid, his fur bristling. He growled again, low and guttural. We're not alone, one engineer whispered, tightening his grip on his weapon. Kara remained calm, but inside, her thoughts raced. If the organism persists, this outpost is a vector. We cannot allow it off-world. Suddenly, the console sparked violently. A shadow passed across the ceiling, impossibly fast. Screams echoed from the corridor they had just exited. Retreat, Kara commanded. To the shuttle. They ran, feet slamming against metal. Behind them, the sound followed, wet skittering fast. Atlas barked furiously, then darted ahead, circling back to ensure Kara was keeping pace. They reached the docking platform. The engineers scrambled aboard the shuttle. Kara hesitated. Atlas wasn't beside her. She turned. In the corridor's dim light, she saw him, standing firm, body low, eyes fixed on the advancing shape. A shadow of undulating limbs crept closer, impossibly silent. "Atlas," she shouted. He didn't move. Kara's instincts, finely honed, ruthlessly practical, screamed at her to board, to close the hatch, to survive. But something in her chest rebelled. She ran forward, snatched a fallen flare from the ground, and ignited it. The searing light pierced the dark, casting jagged shadows on the walls. The creature recoiled slightly, a slick mass of chitin and eyes and limbs, and Atlas struck. He lunged, biting and clawing with precision. Kara flung the flare toward the creature's face, then grabbed Atlas's collar and pulled. Together, they stumbled back toward the shuttle. The hatch closed behind them just as the creature slammed into it. Panting, shaking, she collapsed into the shuttle's seat, her hands still gripping Atlas's fur. No one spoke as they lifted off. Only when the outpost was a distant speck did Kara finally exhale. She looked at Atlas. His muzzle was stained, his breathing heavy. He rested his head on her knee without waiting for permission. She didn't push him away. Later, back on the ship, Hughes debriefed them. "We've quarantined the shuttle and sent the black box to command. Whatever that thing was, we're lucky to be alive." Kara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned to Atlas. She placed her palm gently against his head, stroking behind his ears. "I would not have made it without him." Hughes smiled. "Most of us wouldn't." Kara looked at her own reflection in the viewport. Eyes wide, hair tousled, uniform stained with soot. Changed. For the first time since her arrival, she felt something resembling clarity. Not from the data, not from analysis, from choice. She turned back to Atlas. "You are not a monster." His tail thumped softly. The halls of the Aegis Dawn were quieter now. After the incident at the Chiron Belt outpost, every crew member carried a different kind of silence with them. The kind earned from proximity to annihilation. The kind that clung to skin and shadows and lingered in the corners of the mind, whispering, "You survived this time." Kara walked the corridor beside Atlas, no longer regarding him as an unknown factor, but as something closer to a constant. His presence, once disruptive, now anchored her. They moved in synchrony, his paws patting softly on the metal floor, her steps deliberate and precise. She had resumed her duties quickly. No ceremony, no declarations. The crew seemed to understand this about her. Respect was offered not through words, but through space. And when she spoke, they listened with the attentiveness reserved for those who had proven themselves, not by title, but by action. Her work had shifted, no longer relegated to quiet observation. She was consulted directly on xenobiological protocols, on behavioral assessment, on containment strategy. The outpost incident had carved out a new role for her, one unspoken but undeniable. She was no longer just the alien among them. She was one of them, and yet, a part of her remained apart. It always would. She accepted this. She entered the behavioral analysis lab where a quiet hum filled the air, interrupted only by the soft chimes of data streams. On the central table lay the fragmented sample retrieved from the outpost, carefully sealed, completely inert. The containment field glowed faint blue. Kara studied it with measured caution. The organism's biology defied known classification. Partly synthetic, partly organic. Neural threads woven through cartilage-like tissue. Not grown, designed. But by what intelligence, and for what purpose? Still nothing new? Hughes's voice came from the doorway. She didn't turn. It remains dormant. It requires proximity to organic nervous systems to activate. A parasite, possibly symbiotic at first, until it isn't. He stepped closer, arms crossed. The lab on Mars wants a piece of it. They will not contain it, she said flatly. You don't trust them? I trust systems to fail. Hughes nodded slowly. We're not giving it to them. That's already been decided. That surprised her. She turned. Why? You're not the only one who saw what it could do. It was intelligent. It waited, observed, targeted our weaknesses. Something like that doesn't belong in a lab. It belongs at the bottom of a gravity well where no one can find it. She studied him carefully. You fear it. I do, he said without hesitation. But I fear our curiosity more. She considered that. Your kind has a pattern. Discover. Exploit. Regret. He smirked. And yours. Observe. Withhold. Survive. Their eyes met. Not in opposition, but in understanding. Different strategies. Same stakes. Later that evening, Kara stood once more in the observation dome. Atlas lay at her side, eyes half closed. The stars outside were cold and distant, but not unkind. She activated her neural interface and began recording. Final observation log. Integration proceeds at unexpected depth. Subject Atlas demonstrates continued cognitive resonance with non-human patterns. Emotional data suggests bidirectional bonding. Implication. Cross-species trust is not only possible, but operationally beneficial. She paused. Further, human social structure adapts under pressure in ways my models failed to anticipate. Bonds form not only through shared culture, but through shared risk, shared survival. This may explain their resilience, their recklessness, their beauty. Her voice faltered for a moment. She closed the file. Footsteps approached. Lieutenant Shore entered the dome, holding a small data chip. For you, he said. A message from the Alliance Council. You've been approved for interspecies liaison protocol. You're officially the first Xeno ambassador aboard a joint vessel. Kara took the chip, examining it. I did not request this designation. No, Shore said with a grin. You earned it. She inclined her head. Thank you. He hesitated before leaving. You should know, there's a diplomatic envoy arriving next cycle. From your world. Thought you'd want advance notice. Kara blinked. They sent someone? Apparently. Your reports made an impression. After he left, she stared again at the stars, letting the weight of that information settle in. Her people were notoriously cautious. For them to initiate contact now, after her extended silence, meant only one thing. They had begun to believe in what she was building. Atlas nuzzled her side, sensing her shift in emotion. She placed a hand on his head. I think, she said softly, you're the reason they listened. The next morning, the diplomatic ship arrived in orbit. Sleek, silver, unmistakably alien in design. Watching it dock triggered something in Kara she had long suppressed. A yearning. For home. For language spoken without translation. For faces shaped by the same stars. The airlock opened. From within stepped two envoys, tall, luminous, adorned in formal coverings of her caste. Their eyes, silver and unblinking, met hers. One stepped forward. Kara seat in, of the observatory line, he intoned. She straightened. I am she. We have read your transmissions, observed your trajectory, and reviewed the incident at Chiron. Kara said nothing. The council wishes to debrief you. A pause. But first, the second envoy added, they wish to understand the thing you call dog. Kara blinked. She glanced down at Atlas, who sat calmly at her heel. The envoys stared at him with a mixture of caution and intrigue. He is not a threat, she said. He is unfamiliar, the first envoy said. You speak of him often. Kara stepped aside, allowing them to approach. Atlas stood, wagging his tail once, sensing their tension but not returning it. The first envoy extended a hand, carefully. Atlas sniffed, then gave a gentle lick. Both envoys recoiled slightly, then exchanged glances. "It is strange," the second said, "to be acknowledged by something with no speech." "He communicates," Kare said. "You must choose to listen differently." There was a long silence. "We have much to learn," the first envoy said. Kare nodded once. "Yes, we do." Later, in the assembly hall, she stood before the assembled crew and the two envoys. Commander Hughes offered her a subtle smile. Atlas sat beside her, alert. Kare stepped forward, voice steady. "In this ship, I found what I was sent to understand. Not merely human technology or behavior, but the reason your species endures. You bond. You protect. You trust, often before you should. And in doing so, you create strength out of vulnerability." She looked down at Atlas. He blinked up at her. "I believed monsters were things that threatened safety. But I was wrong. Monsters are made of fear, and fear can be unlearned." She turned to the envoys. "I'm not returning home." The first envoy's expression barely shifted, but his tone did. "Then you are choosing them." "I am choosing us," she corrected. "All of us." The room was quiet. Then Hughes clapped once. Others followed. The applause spread, not loud but real. It was enough. That night, as Kare walked back to her quarters, Atlas trotting beside her, she caught a glimpse of Earth out the viewport. Blue, green, alive. It no longer felt distant. Inside her room, she removed her insignia and placed it on her desk. A symbol of transition. She sat beside Atlas on the floor, her hand resting gently against his fur. She no longer observed from the outside. She belonged. And in that quiet moment, with the dog that had once terrified her curled beside her, Kare finally understood what it meant to be human.